Here's a quick word from our sponsor.
Vercel is the platform for front-end developers, providing the speed and reliability innovators need to create at the moment of inspiration. Founded by the creators of Next.js, Vercel has zero configuration support for 35 plus front-end frameworks, including SvelteKit. We enable the world's largest brands like Under Armour, eBay, and Nintendo to iterate faster and create quality software. Try out Vercel today to experience the easiest way to use Svelte.
Radio.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Svelte Radio. It's me, one of your hosts, Kevin, and I'm joined by Antony, one of our other hosts. Hello, Antony.
Hello.
Hey. And today we have yet another guest. It's Alex Patterson of, how would you like me to introduce you? Are you from Coding Cat Dev, or are you from AppWrite? Let's hear it.
It's a very, very fair question. So I'm the founder of codingcat.dev. I am also a developer advocate for AppWrite.
Ah, so I wasn't wrong in any of the...
No.
You
nailed
all
it.
right. So
a man of many hats, but actually I was going to say you really do have a lot of hats because they're all behind you.
I try to collect. I never wore hats growing up, and then as an adult, I suddenly had a collection for some reason.
So Alex has this setup behind him with, I don't know, I'm going to try to count here. Is it like eight hats? But there's also an avocado hat and a pineapple hat. Is that a hat?
So those are more like DevRel things. So one of them is the Firebase. Oh my gosh, I'm forgetting his name. I can't.
Like the mascot?
Sparky. There we go. Sparky is Firebase's mascot. I'm a Firebase GDE as well, so I finally got to talk them into giving me one of those. And then this year, actually, at one of their conferences, they were giving them away, and I'm like, it took me years to get one of those. What are you doing? And then I have a couple plushies just for developer advocacy type stuff, which is fun.
Makes sense.
Nice.
Makes sense. You tend to collect a lot of conference stuff, I guess, over the years.
I keep trimming mine down.
Cool. So what do you do? Like, what's a normal day for Alex? Like,
oh my goodness, I don't know what a normal day is. That's part of being a developer advocate. That's part of the trick. So. It's kind of interesting being a developer advocate because some days it's like this. You're just doing kind of interviews and talking all day. Other days I'm writing demos and writing apps just for people to check out. Especially on the AppWrite side, there's so many different possibilities because AppWrite, for those who don't know, is a backend as a service. Kind of similar to Firebase if you used it, very similar to Supabase. Where you can do authentication, storage, database. I'm probably missing some things, cloud functions in there. We're rolling out some new features, which I think I can talk about at this point. If not, it's okay too.
I guess we'll get to that point further in the podcast as well.
There's so much. Like a lot of my day is either kind of sampling that out or the other part of it is probably a lot of writing, right? Which with ChatGPT, I don't even know if any of us will have to write in the future, which is nice. So.
That would be nice, yeah.
So it's a mixture of all of those things, a lot of video editing, you name it. I'm doing something different each day, which kind of works for my brain actually really well. If I was stuck doing the same thing day in, day out, I'd probably go crazy.
Right. That's fair enough. Yeah. I guess my role is kind of similar to yours in that sense that I get to do a lot of different things. Like this last week, I've been doing YouTube shorts for the Svelte Society YouTube channel, which is, I've never done that before. It almost feels like marketing though, which is not what I kind of want to do, right?
Yeah, it's certainly firmly in that category, isn't it? The shorts are like an answer to the attention spans of people reducing.
Yes. TikToks.
I always feel guilty. Yeah. Well, that's it. I feel guilty when I'm sort of engaging in them or thinking about, is this a good thing or not? I always feel guilty.
Yeah. It's funny. Like I might have mentioned this to Brittany last week when we recorded the podcast, but like they've recently started having like multiple videos in one video. I don't know if you guys have seen this, but like they'll have like half of the screen is one video, and then they'll have two small squares below that.
Wow.
With two other videos, because of course, how can you only watch one video at a time?
Oh my gosh.
That makes no sense. And to my millennial brain, that's just too much.
Yeah.
We're turning out all of our species into goldfish with our memory capability. Jeez.
Yeah.
At least we'll have ChatGPT to save us. So
yeah, exactly. The savior of ChatGPT.
Anyway, tangent. So what's your story like in terms of programming and engineering and stuff? Where you coming from?
So I think I kind of knew all my life that I wanted to do something in computers, but early on I didn't know what something meant. And it took me a little while to figure it out. I actually went to college to become an engineer and took my first Java class and was like, well, wait a minute, this is amazing. I had taken like C++ and things like that before, but didn't like it that much and kind of assumed like maybe programming wasn't going to be my thing. But yeah, then we started writing Java and switched my whole major to computer science at that point, or information systems, I should say, because I am not a technical person. I always knew I'd kind of need to be able to talk to people, and at that time, that was information systems because it wrapped a business degree around the CS side. So I did get like associates or whatever in business as well as information systems. Throughout that period, I started writing a lot of PHP and just web. If folks remember Dreamweaver that are listening, a lot of Dreamweaver back in those days.
Oh, yeah.
It's funny that you mentioned Dreamweaver. We actually talked with a guy called Eric Brehalt from I think he's from Nuclea. It's some AI startup. Shocker, right? Startup doing AI. But anyway, so he talked a lot about like his history of like going from the early web and then going into like stuff. And I mentioned Dreamweaver because I used Dreamweaver. That was like my first experience of doing websites as well. Maybe we should actually include like a link to. I wonder if there are like videos of like the old version of Dreamweaver so people can see what it was actually like.
There totally are out on YouTube.
Yeah. Is it still a product?
Yeah, it still comes with Adobe.
Wow,
Adobe bought it. Yeah.
Oh.
I started on Notepad, but then I used Front Page, and that was my thing.
Yeah, I loved Notepad++ for years.
This was just like regular Notepad inside Windows, I think. Wow. I wasn't advanced.
So, all right. So, continue. Sorry for
no,
the
it's all good.
there.
So yeah, that was kind of so I got my undergrad, and then quickly coming out of college, they're like, you need to find a job, obviously. So I just happened to stumble into. I'm located in Southwest Michigan, and it's basically the capital furniture area of the world. All the headquarters are here for their office furniture.
So is that like where Ashley Furniture has their headquarters? And
no, but that's kind of funny. So the top ones, number one is Steelcase, and then you have Herman Miller, Hayworth.
I see.
They're all kind of in this area, right? So there's a lot of subsidiaries underneath those brands. A lot of manufacturing actually happens on the East Coast, but this is where like the headquarters are. So all of their IT staff and things like that are up here. A lot of the manufacturing has actually moved back, which is surprising too. Anyways, so I jumped into that, and they're like, well, we actually run SAP. We need people that need to be able to learn this because we know a lot of people don't learn it in school or anything like that, which has changed too. But so you're going to write this thing called ABAP. And so
what?
Yeah, ABAP. It's
that sounds very
SAP's
corporate.
Yeah, it's SAP's own proprietary language, if you will. It was nice though. ABAP, I wrote it roughly for 10 years, a decade of SAP type work. I think I was in the field for like 12, 13 years, but a lot of that ended up being architectural stuff on top of that. So still loved web though. Like I anything we did, I'm like, this should be somehow web based. So we'd put up full, like for our manufacturing line, I'd put up displays and we'd write it all in HTML and, it'd spit out RFC out of their side. So I'd go write ABAP backend code with a .NET middleware to a front end whatever at that point.
Right.
So I think we were writing a lot of early on jQuery, obviously, but then kind of moved into forgetting the name of it at the moment, but it doesn't matter. Some .NET type stuff. And the whole time just thinking to myself, like, I have to be just in tech full time. This is ridiculous. It's a big difference when you're working for an office furniture company doing tech to working for a tech company, right? So
Yeah.
I got to the point where I just knew I couldn't stay, and finally decided to jump out and do some consulting and things like that, and then started at my first startup was Builder.io with Steve and Mishko.
Oh, interesting.
That clan over there. So yeah, it's been a fun ride. Startup life is not the same as my first 10, 12 years
not
of
at all.
enterprise, right?
It's
I think
a bit more.
Builder is a pretty
fluid.
good jump off point, isn't it? Into that.
Yeah,
tech
it wasn't
world.
bad.
Yeah.
there's a kind of a mind, or how do I say this? Like when you talk about probably 5 people that have influenced the web in the last 10 years,
Yeah.
Mishko's got to be right at the top, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Definitely.
there is Rich Harris, but let's not worry about that too much.
Right. Svelte podcast. Okay.
Yes. Focus, Alex. Focus. No, I'm kidding.
Shoot. So yeah,
All
I
right.
mean, as you kind of grow up and move along, like that's how programming kind of came to me. It was just what I needed to learn as I went, and my biggest passion through that whole thing was always web development. So I always came back to it.
That's great. So you started at Builder.io, I guess, in your web dev kind of after leaving the other stuff behind. So when did you get into Svelte? Like, is that close to the same time that you started, or did you try everything?
I would probably actually say that Brittany's continually push towards Svelte got me into Svelte. So part of the founding of Coding Cat, I started up the podcast for Coding Cat, and relatively, I think a year in, Brittany had reached out, and I came to find out she was like literally 20 minutes from my house, which was totally random and weird. So we're in the same area, and she's like, I'd love to join you for the podcast and help you out with the site and all that stuff. So Brittany's been helping me with Coding Cat since, I don't know, year 2 essentially of the site. We're doing a lot of big changes to it. So being someone who's always constantly like checking out the web and needs to stay up on it for everything that we do, Svelte was always out there, but it was always kind of one of these things like, yeah, there's a ton of JavaScript frameworks that come and go, and what makes this one unique? And you start to realize like, wow, this is different in many ways, the precompile and things like that, and getting closer or back to JavaScript was nice, especially after having written like React with Next.js for a while and running into all the, I'll call it issues. I don't know if it's an issue, a feature of reactivity in React. That kind of has put a bad taste in my mouth for sure. So Svelte kind of came in at that same time for me, and we started checking out, and it wasn't quite where I wanted it yet. So we had paused for a long time. And then all the things that I needed started appearing in SvelteKit. that I would want in a site. And I think we're almost to the point. We've been kind of slowly rewriting to Svelte over the course of that time, but we hit that point where I think just recently ISR and things have been talked about.
Yeah.
So it's finally to the point where I'm okay to start to actually make the switch. So it's really exciting for me.
It's funny you mentioned the ISR. I just saw today a tweet from someone that showed ISR. So ISR is incremental static regeneration for those that don't know. It's basically a way of like caching a response for a certain time, and then you don't have to like rerun the function every time someone visits this particular page, I guess. Would that be an okay explanation? I don't know. So I just saw today a tweet by someone showing that. So this currently works at Vercel only in the SvelteKit adapter ecosystem. But I just saw today someone posting a Cloudflare example from 2 years ago with this stuff implemented. So I assume they're using like workers key value store or whatever it's called over there. So that'd be cool to see if that would be possible to integrate into the Cloudflare adapter. But we'll see.
Yeah, and we've actually been running CodingCat on ISR through Next.js for a long time now. But the advantage for us is huge. I mean, we can make our sites static for, a long time. We could actually probably make most of our pages 6 months plus. Just make those static because of the changes for ISR. You can just hit them that one time and say, hey, revalidate this page. So it's been really nice. It really lowers the traffic burden and bandwidth stuff that you're getting into. But it's funny too, though, the SSR, so server side rendered side of things, it's becomes very nice too for a lot of the coursework that we're implementing too. So I think knowing kind of the architecture and the capabilities of whatever framework you're in is really key. I was actually just did a podcast with Angel, who's writing this book about build a front-end web framework from scratch.
Ooh.
And it's funny, the more I've done from scratch, I've learned not to say anything bad about frameworks because of how much you take for granted, right? Like just the if statement, right? Like it's amazing to me how much you take for granted right there. Like go get this DOM node, hide it, do this, and like it's all in one like poof, if that's it.
Yep.
And so a lot of us, including myself, I don't know about you guys, but we kind of learned to write web pages via a framework. So like for myself, that was Angular 2. Like that's how I wrote. Before that, it was PHP and WordPress, obviously, but realistically, like I used a framework. And then to go back and completely yank out a framework and try to write some JavaScript to do what you want, it's so much slower. It's unbelievable.
Oh yeah.
So
I remember writing so I did this WordPress gig a while back, like a couple of years, and I had just dabbled a bit with Vue at the time. I didn't know Vue at all, so I was like, I'm just going to write this in vanilla JavaScript. So I wrote like what was it? It was like a slider kind of thing, and it was so much work to just get it to like, and even a slider that can be kind of complicated to make even in a framework.
Totally. Yeah. It's amazing, all of those kind of little adaptive things. And really with like Svelte, all the transitions and like all of the web APIs that get pulled in, it just makes things so much easier. So the great part for me working at AppWrite is they have really embraced Svelte as well. So we actually have a new design library that we call Pink. It's pink.appwrite.io. And that we actually use within SvelteKit to build our, what we call a console. So the console at AppWrite is kind of the front end, if you will, of our back end. So that's what's utilizing all of our API calls and things like that. So if you're lucky enough, we're technically still in private beta. I don't know when this comes out, but we'll be out of private beta.
1 or 2
soon.
weeks.
Yeah, so we might be out by the time this comes out. But right around then, if you check out cloud.appwrite.io, anything in there, you'll see for what people think the application is, that's our front end for all of our services at that point. So that's what's getting deployed currently with all of your self-hosted versions and everything like that. And it's really been fun to see kind of what we're using SvelteKit for and what we'll be using it for in the future, and see it grow in a very, enterprise is the wrong word, that feels gross, but a very, very structured and mature application.
Yeah,
I'm looking on the Pink site under build, and I'm seeing the installation where you install it by npm and import it. And I really enjoy the fact that the Svelte logo is the biggest bubble. Makes me very happy. It's just a few pixels bigger than the React one.
Yeah, and I think if you go to, I'm going to get it wrong, so I'll look it up as we're talking. I put it in here, I forgot. So if you go to github.com/AppWrite/console, that is the actual console that runs what people think of as AppWrite. So that's Svelte and SvelteKit running there.
Ooh,
and you'll see 81% Svelte, 18% TypeScript.
Wow. That's a good
I'm curious
ratio.
what the 0.3 other is. It must be a YAML file or JSON or something.
Yeah, it's interesting that you can't click the other thing.
It's kind of a bummer, isn't it?
Maybe a feature
I thought
request.
that one time GitHub had like an actual graph. I don't see that anymore. Like a pie chart type thing.
Yeah, that sounds familiar.
You can click Svelte and TypeScript, but you can't click other.
Yeah. I thought they had another like graph of this stuff though. Anyway, it doesn't matter.
Right.
Yeah, so my worlds kind of collided there, like learning about Svelte and then going to a company that has really embraced it. AppWrite's kind of unique though in how we do a lot of things because we support so many SDKs and so many languages. It was somewhat amazing to me to realize just how many web developers we had and how passionate they are. And all the time we talk about pros and cons of different frameworks. What should we be focusing on? And Svelte honestly is right up there. The only other thing that we often talk about is Astro for kind of our go-to language. The hard part in saying that is that React and Next.js takes up a huge amount of our like user base still because React is so massive. So it's always kind of one of those things you're torn about, but we just feel like in the next 5 years that's going to change so much that we're okay with where we're at.
Yeah. It's kind of like you have to cater to your audience or your customers, I guess in your case, in some sense. It wouldn't make sense to just like not make an SDK for Next.js or Nuxt or these other frameworks, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's interesting. Like there was this article, I think yesterday on Hacker News called I think it was called Thoughts on Svelte, and it was basically a developer going through their experience using Svelte and the drawbacks and the pros and all this. And I thought about this article a lot, and they had trouble with, like, they liked Svelte, but they had some issues with like reactive statements that, like, if you use too many reactive statements, it can get very hairy pretty quickly because you have no idea like what will trigger which reactive statements and in what order, etc. And then it kind of hit me, like, reading the comments of this on Hacker News, and most people are just like, oh, it's not JSX, blah blah blah, it's the blah blah blah, you know, the usual. It's not JSX, it's not JavaScript. How can you use this? Oh, it's so ugly, blah blah. And then
said that about JSX once too. Just FYI.
Yeah, I'm sure they did. So basically, what I realized is that, like, developer experience really is key when it comes to getting new people to try new frameworks. So there's a lot of hype around, for example, Solid.js right now. And I'm sure Solid.js is great, but it still uses JSX, which is not, like, you would think that would be a pro, because you can just transfer your React knowledge to Solid, and then obviously there are some differences, but you could do that. But why not just go another step forward and just use something that's even easier and ditches the JSX part? So to me, the more I use Svelte and the more I think about Svelte it's just like the DX. It's the most important thing. A lot of people think about like the performance, but I absolutely am convinced that it's the developer experience. And it also shows in the kind of people that show up to learn Svelte, I think. In the Discord, you can for example see a lot of beginners show up. Yep. And they always say this thing like, oh, I tried React, but it was so hard, and then I tried Svelte and it's so easy. And I think in time that is gonna shift the user base from these more complicated like JSX based frameworks into something that looks like Svelte. If it's not Svelte, then something that comes after it that takes it even further.
The funny part for me is I probably have a alternative thought to kind of most folks writing Svelte, and I really enjoyed the JSX language. I did not enjoy the React side of it. So I would be more than happy to write, JSX style for Svelte as well, with the way that maps work and if statements and things like that are working. There's some great tools like Builder.io has theirs as well. That's written in JSX. Forgetting the name. It starts with
Quick.
M. It's the one that transpiles. Mitosis. Thank you.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. Like you can write JSX and it will spit out to any language, including Svelte. And it's like I really enjoy that experience. I can't quite put my finger on it either. And it's something weird about like putting pound signs with ifs and like all of that stuff. And, Brittany and I will be talking and she's like, that's why it's better. And I'm like, no, it's just different. Like it's not better or worse to me. Like it's just different.
Yeah. I think maybe I'm probably saying JSX, but I'm probably thinking about the whole experience, if that makes sense. So, like you have to create a function to create a component, and inside that you have to use a use state kind of thing. To me, it all just like it's the same thing, but I understand that JSX is just the templating part. But anyway, it's like in a couple of years, we're just going to be able to tell ChatGPT to generate a Svelte function from a comment or something, and we'll never have to write code again.
I haven't tried Get Copilot X or whatever.
Yeah.
Have you guys tried that yet?
No,
not Copilot X.
I have a really hard time. Like I had a hard time leaving Copilot on for recording videos because it will always be audio filling and stuff, and I'm like, Like I need to type this as like someone new learning would type it, not how I want it for Copilot. So
right, yeah, exactly.
When I've been interviewing people for roles, I've left it on, and they sort of pair, and they share my VS Code instance, and they're always happy to see Copilot there. Then they go, "Oh, should I turn it off?" I'm like, "No, because I wouldn't expect you to turn it off at work. Right. So why would it be a reasonable thing to do to turn it off in an interview? Because it has to be like real life, I know you can code. I know you can read docs. Like that's not the test."
Right. Yeah, it's more about like putting these Legos together into something that functions.
It's Speaking how you do it, right? It's approach.
Yeah, I was going to say just a couple of days ago, I tried generating a load function for a SvelteKit page using ChatGPT, and it was a lot of fun. And it like almost did it, but I think it's using like SvelteKit version from 2021 or something. So it's
Are you
still
using ChatGPT 4?
Yes.
Yeah, so it's got an older data set.
Yeah, exactly. But you can feed it like with this, like you could put in this is how a SvelteKit load function looks. Yeah. Please write me one that does X, Y, or Z or something. Anyway, sorry, this is not a ChatGPT podcast, but it's so cool. Like,
yeah, it's gonna be hard not to talk about these things just constantly coming up.
Yeah,
I was able to actually get to continue the conversation. Sorry, but I have access to Google Bard as well, and I'm hoping they're talking about a lot of the GDE folks being able to get the API access to it. I'm like, when can I get that? Because that's the piece I'm really curious about, and it's amazing how quickly it's learning. That's the piece that shocked me. Like, we asked it something one day, it was way off, and then the next day it's perfectly spot on. And it's pulling in live data, unlike GPT-4, not pulling
interesting.
Live. So I will be curious how quickly things are going to catch up to the point where it's putting like its own pull requests in for SvelteKit.
Yeah,
I think there is an AI that's doing that. There's an AI that's just doing pull requests on a site constantly, right? I can't remember what it's called. The site
it's a funny
terrible.
side project.
Yeah.
So that's so I think Google Bar, that was released, I don't know, like a couple of weeks ago, I think.
Yeah.
And I remember these like Twitter reply guys saying, "Oh, it's so bad. It's telling me Google is a monopoly or something." It was like, so someone had asked it like, "Oh, is Google I don't remember the query, but it was something along the lines of, is Google a monopoly?" And it was like, yeah, these are the reasons why Google is monopoly, which is kind of funny. But then like, it's nice to hear that it's improving day by day, because I didn't think that was part of the appeal there. I thought it was like ChatGPT, and it's like the data set was frozen or whatever you'd want to call it. Interesting.
I just put in Bard write me a SvelteKit load function for Google YouTube API. It looks pretty spot on.
Oh wow.
It's amazing.
So I guess we'll all be out of jobs, and no.
Gonna have to go back to farming, I guess.
Oh yeah, the good old days.
That is bait, Kev. That is bait. Yeah, the thing is, someone was saying the other day, it was basically comes down to, the jobs will be there for those who understand how to use AI to make their job better. Because we like, as developers, we do spend our entire life automating our own jobs so that we can do more important or interesting things. And then we're all up in arms about AI taking our jobs away, but it's just doing a lot more of the work for us. So it's a bit weird to be against it, I guess.
I'm looking forward to it. Like, I don't want to write like basic, like fetch this from an API kind of thing.
Over and over and over.
Yeah. Here's a quick word from our sponsor.
Vercel is the platform for front-end developers, providing the speed and reliability innovators need to create at the moment of inspiration. Founded by the creators of Next.js, Vercel has zero configuration support for 35 plus front-end frameworks, including SvelteKit. We enable the world's largest brands like Under Armour, eBay, and Nintendo to iterate faster and create quality software. Try out Vercel today to experience the easiest way to use Svelte.
All right, yeah. So let's talk a bit more about like Svelte, maybe.
Oh, we could talk about that. Yeah.
I could tell you about my pick if you want.
Oh, well, when we get to the pick section, unless you want, I mean, you could talk about it now. That's fine.
I mean, it's kind of a fun thing that I've been playing around with Svelte. So,
all right, let's go.
Yeah,
right or wrong, I decided to start forking and not literally click the button fork. So, there's this great UI package called Skeleton UI, which I'm sure you guys have heard of.
Yep.
So I started peeling that off and started writing my own Black Cat UI. So it's almost the identical setup because it's clearly a fork of Skeleton UI. But I like being able to kind of be the maintainer of it, because you know how things go. Like my experience at AppWrite too, it's, there's 10,000 people putting stuff in and issues in and things like that. And so us as maintainers, we only have so much time. And it's like, I think Skeleton's going to have this same issue. I kind of want to own it myself. So I do want to like tweak certain things and change things that's probably not going to match up with theirs. And I'm like, what? Why don't I just make my own version of this? So I'm going to call it Black Cat UI. It's at blackcatui.com. And it's amazing what I've learned about writing Svelte just by doing this. Like,
Yep.
I would tell anyone, if you want to really deep dive and learn Svelte a little better, this is a really cool way to do it. So one thing I've learned is I hate that we don't have name slots and layouts, first of all, but
Right.
so there's component side of things. So like learning more about, you know, name slotting and reactivity and things like that as you go along through building this out. It's really been incredible for me to understand kind of what I'll put like the Svelte way of doing things, if you will.
Yep.
And it's been eye-opening and enlightening to the fact that you can keep it relatively simple, like JavaScript simple, and yet still have so much power against the UI. So it's been really nice to learn a lot of different things going through this.
Yeah, I think so. So when I used to work a bit at Buddybase, we also had like a UI kit based on Adobe Spectrum, and like building components for a UI kit. I definitely agree with you. Like you get a much deeper understanding for what are the strengths, what are the weaknesses of the framework, and yeah, I'm just curious. Like, are there any things in particular that you thought were missing that you would like? Oh, this would be nice. You mentioned named slots in layouts, but that's more of like a SvelteKit issue, right?
Right. Yeah, that's true. From a Svelte standpoint, I don't think I've really hit anything. Some of the aha moments I didn't really realize were there's the reactivity side when you use like the double $ to import any other props that have not been included.
Yeah, like the REST.
Yeah,
thing.
exactly. Yep. Yeah, that's the proper name, isn't it? It always throws me off. I'm like, well, why are they doing a REST API? I don't understand. But yeah, that was kind of one of those things where it's like, well, how do I get these through? And in React, we would just do the spread operator, right? We'd do ... and grab the rest. And so that was kind of something that caught me off guard a little bit. I thought it would be a little simpler than that. And then I started to understand the reasoning why. And if you can always take and mentally reset yourself back to this is pre-compiled, there's reasons that this went this way because of that. I think that always gets me back to the right like headspace when I'm using it. So
that's a good thing to think about, definitely, because you kind of realize, like you said, they can't know the props beforehand. So
yeah,
how would that work? But
yeah. I think some of the like animation API stuff is significantly better just because it comes within Svelte. Whereas typically you'd have to like learn a whole nother package, and I think that the having those built in, it is really similar to like the web API side of things, and it just comes naturally.
Yep.
You know, when I've written, you know, component frameworks in the past, and when I always wrote those, it was always kind of like, well, get the button done and then we'll make the button fancy with like a click animation or that. And now it's just like so easy. It's like, no, just include all of those variations. Yeah. And so it's things like that have really been shocking to me. Again, huge props to the team over at Skeleton. They've done all the heavy work. This is just me kind of playing around and
adjusting it and
adjusting it. Yeah, the really fun parts, like I need an avatar one, and I made mine and like put it out there, and then like the next day theirs came out. I was like, oh well, I should have just waited. So it's stuff like that that's going to be interesting to see, but. It's just different variations. I'll make ours more like cat-like as we go, if you will. So,
yeah, so one thing that always bugged me is a bit of a stretch, but has bugged me with Svelte is that it only looks at one component at a time. I would love for it to be able to like build some kind of graph and just like compile everything into, I don't know, something that would optimize all of the different things. I wonder if you could do cool things with the developer experience if you had that capability. But,
That would be pretty interesting, actually.
yeah.
We're actually using, and Skeleton's using, Svelte. I don't know if you've heard of this
No.
tool yet.
I've heard of it. I don't know what it does though.
Yeah,
It sounds familiar.
So Svelte, it actually takes like the TypeScript definitions for the components, and it actually analyzes like the props and slots and things like that, and it'll provide back out documentation for those.
Oh, nice.
Excuse me. So I found that to be a really cool tool, and it's also I'm kind of curious from you guys. Let's see, are you TypeScript or JS doc? Or all?
I have to admit I'm kind of neither. I'm just
Okay.
JavaScript, but I like the idea of the JS doc thing. I have a massive version to comments, as some people already know. So it's kind of an internal fight with myself. Like I'm adding comments to my code, which is not good, but I am getting effectively TypeScript without compilation, which is good. So
Yeah.
we'll see.
Yeah.
I'm going to say JS.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I'm in the TypeScript camp.
Okay. So for the longest time, I've been a huge TypeScript fan, and just checking out JSDoc. The one thing that I hate, hate's a strong word, but one thing I dislike about writing Google functions and like Firebase Cloud functions and AppWrite functions is you can't just drop those in and use them for like Node. So if you have all the TypeScript types in there and stuff like that, and JSDoc was always kind of this thing that like, is it okay? Isn't it okay? And I really enjoyed it, but I ran a poll and people were like 90% TypeScript still. So we switched everything back to TypeScript, and it's provided a lot of nice tooling that I kind of forgot about. And Svelte is one of those things that kind of stands out for me now. So it's really interesting.
Yeah. So this JSDoc TypeScript thing, I'm not sure if you guys have followed the controversy recently. Yeah. Have you heard about this, Alex?
I don't know the controversy.
Yeah.
Tell me.
So basically, there was an article by I forget which publication that they'd interviewed Rich about how Svelte is moving from TypeScript to JSDoc on like internally, right? And this made people think that Svelte wouldn't support TypeScript as like for the end users, right? But it's basically, so there was this whole controversy where people were like, "Oh, Svelte is moving away from TypeScript. This is so bad." Blah blah blah. It's hilarious. So basically, I'm gonna have him on for a devlog next week.
Nice.
I think it's next week. And we're going to chat a bit about this, so that might be interesting to listen to. It's probably going to be out when this comes out, so I'll put it in the show notes for anyone listening. But yeah, that was fun. But Twitter is always like that, though.
It is, and the thing that got me was a certain person who will not be named saying that it's nice. It was the fact that one of the big wins for us in terms of TypeScript, not using TypeScript, is that we don't have a compilation step, and that was seen by a particular Twitter personality as it's nice for the Svelte team to admit that compilation is a bad thing, something along those lines. And I thought that was very, very provocative, such that I closed Twitter and didn't answer.
Oh, you managed to not reply?
I managed to not reply, because I knew exactly what that person was trying to do, and I just thought I'm not going to get involved this time. It's a waste of time. But it's interesting because it does definitely split people a bit, doesn't it? The whole TypeScript thing, and I hadn't really thought about it in terms of compilation because I'm so used to now people writing things in TypeScript and it turning to JavaScript that I hadn't really thought of it as compilation. But it does. It abstracts you again one step away. And the reason I don't like it is it puts me back in the old days where I think everyone was using Babel because nothing worked in browsers. And I would open up the libraries and just want to modify something in my Node modules because you could do that in JavaScript. And I came from a Java world where you couldn't. because it's compiled. In JavaScript, you could, but every time I opened a node module to just tweak something to see if it worked, I couldn't because it had a dist file. And in the dist file was a bunch of minified JavaScript that I couldn't fathom, couldn't edit. And I was like, this is taking away the one thing that I really like about node modules and about JavaScript. It's taking it away. And that eventually disappeared, which is amazing because here we are in modern browsers and stuff, and that's all gone away. CoffeeScript being another example of that happening. But then now it's TypeScript, which then compiles again, and there you are again, stuck with compiled things you can't just edit on the fly to test things out. And it makes you got to go through the whole package linking thing and recompilation and watching files and forgetting to reload. And, it's a step backwards, in my opinion. That was almost a rant, but it's not a rant. It's a rant.
Yeah. Well, yeah. All right. Any other topics that you want to cover? Anything that we've missed? That we think
I'll ask this question.
All right.
Svelte Summit Spring's coming up, and this might be a question, that I really need. When people are putting CFPs in, what are you guys looking for this year?
Oh, that's a good question. So I usually look for everything. Well, so to me, Svelte Summit is about, since it's such a niche conference, right? It's a conference about Svelte. It's not a conference about JavaScript. I usually like to see more practical things. So, like, look at this cool thing that I built. Here's how to do it. Something like that. It could be components. It could be libraries. It could be anything really, or a showcase of this is so cool. I built this using Svelte. That would probably be more of like a lightning kind of talk, I guess. But in terms of topics, anything really. Probably focusing a bit more on SvelteKit than Svelte, because SvelteKit just came out with a 1.0. I guess we're at like 1.15 or something now.
Moving quick.
But yeah. Does that answer your question? I don't
Absolutely know. Does.
All right.
I got to block more time off for some CFPs, so that's perfect.
Yeah, the CFP closes. This is going to be closed by the time this comes out. So I think there's like 2 or 3 more days to submit.
Have to get that in.
Yeah. All right. Cool. So now we're going to hear about some unpopular opinions. So I don't have one this week again. So Antony, do you want to go first, or?
I'm happy to go first, actually.
right.
Mine was based upon what Alex was saying, actually. And that for me is the whole DX discussion around, the DX being better with Svelte. It's kind of controversial because obviously UX is king, really, because you've got the customer is most important, blah blah blah. But I actually think that on the same level, DX is also king. To the point where I really focus on DX because UX is solvable by somebody who isn't me, and I should focus on DX. So the reason I think DX is king is because you're trying to build a product that competes with other products in usually a very saturated space. And if your DX sucks, and if it takes you ages to iterate and ages to write software and experiment with features, if your code isn't something that you can try on people and then throw away because it doesn't work, and then tweak it and change it and iterate on it, then you're not going to do all these things. You're going to have the solution that you're given be the final solution, get it out there, all polished, done. That's it. If it doesn't work, tough. It's really hard to change, etc., etc., etc. So I think that DX is king because ultimately that is driving forward the site, the platform, the application for your customers. It is as I don't want to put it above UX because this is controversial, unpopular opinions.
I mean, DX is just UX for developers, right?
It is. Yeah. And not to lose focus on the customer, but I think DX is really helping with that. So, yeah, for me,
that makes sense.
DX is king.
So working at AppWrite, I cannot agree more. Like DX is what drives our whole product. I mean, we will take full initiatives and shut them down if the community is like, this isn't working for us. So couldn't agree more. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess it's with developers are used to quite a good standard of stuff nowadays as well. So
Yeah.
It's a pretty hard, pretty hard place to be.
I can imagine like dealing with, because I guess you guys you're like working with, and you have to think about the DX all of the time as a dev focused product or company. I guess it's different compared to like, for example, Beyond, right, which is a company focused towards like the tourism industry, for example.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So it's interesting.
Yeah, the most interesting thing for us, even we don't even say customers, like we just say developers, our developers, because at the end of the day, you know, very much VC back and very thankful we are and things like that. But at the end of the day, if the developers don't like the product, there is no product. I mean, it's just going to be so bad that no one will ever use it.
Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, your UX is your DX, in fact,
exactly.
in a way there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's built by them.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think our level of developer integration is aimed at and used by people who know how to use Wix or WordPress, for example, and so the standard of stuff that they're used to, you know, is bad. So we don't really have to try very hard to provide something that kind of is simple and usable. I would love to have a better DX for us. I would love to have a better developer-facing interface from our platform, but we just haven't really needed it right now. It's all iframes and you know, script tags. So,
yeah.
All right, Alex, this is for sure controversial. Let's hear it.
It's funny to call it like unpopular. I think there's a 50-50 split, 60-40, somewhere in there. But yeah, my pick is TailwindCSS. I've written enough like utility classes in my life to understand it's really cool to just have one that's pretty standardized and used by tons of people. Yep. I think, and again, Black Hat UI, skeleton, that is all TailwindCSS under the hood, but like componentized. And I think that's the piece that gets people in trouble. They're like, I don't want 12,000 things in my attributes for, you know, specifying a button. It's like, cool, make that one time like you would with a normal CSS button, but then use Tailwind for the rest. Like, that's the part I think that catches people. And I'm probably going to get like banned off Twitter after this comes out because there's some real hate on that side of it. But it's just, it's such a nice like time saver for me.
Yep.
Like I can spin anything up that's based on Tailwind and I already know all the utilities. And people that write CSS are going, yeah, you could just write CSS and know the same thing.
Yeah.
But it's cool to be able to then take that and break that down like one step further and say, you know, not having to learn all the idiosyncrasies of all those CSS pieces it's rough. I mean, it's really hard. And then take and create components for it and using some of the cool selectors that we have now, like the has and not and things like that. Quickly use like dark themes on stuff. Like I could go on and on and on. And I don't think anyone should like hate or love, you know, a single product. If you want to use CSS in specific areas, use CSS. Like it's great. But to have all of these utilities set up for like, here's a grid column, here's how I can have one set by default, here's this thing by default. Like it's just leaps and bounds, you know, in the right direction, in my opinion. Do I love all the stuff that comes out in the attributes either? No, I don't love it, but it makes it a lot easier and it's really cool to read. So I don't know. That's my unpopular opinion, is that I do love Tailwind CSS, and every person that I've talked to that really dislikes it, they'll give me reasons and I'll sit down with them and show them how to do it in Tailwind. They're like, oh, I didn't know you could do that. And that's always the like moment of, okay, good. I'm glad like you feel okay.
It's interesting that you picked Tailwind because I've been a staunch, what do you say, anti-Tailwind, not really a very staunch one. I just haven't really used it and I haven't really liked it that much. But I actually built the latest Svelte Summit website in using Tailwind, and I think it's kind of neat. Like I really like the fact that you have like a config where you can just config your colors and your whatever you need, your fonts or all that stuff. But the way I've been using it is like I've mostly been using all of the classes, but then for some stuff it's a bit rigid, I'd say. Like for getting nicely done like grid areas, for example, that gets a bit weird. Like if you're going to write one long row of area, like doesn't work. So for stuff like that, I've just been writing a separate class for that, and that's totally fine. That's kind of that's a good way of doing it, I think. You don't have to use all of the features if you don't want to, right?
Right. The nice part, like with grid, is a great example because I don't think anyone loves their default setup for grid. It's kind of funny, but with the new just-in-time compilation that they have, you can actually put brackets like anywhere and make it how you want. So like typically on grid, people are going to use like grid and then, you know, make a row and then do bracket, and they can put like one FR and like whatever they want, and boom, you're done. Yeah. And so it does get some getting used to. And I think the argument there is always, well, if I'm going to get used to that, why wouldn't I just learn CSS? And it's like, you should learn both.
Yeah. No, I've enjoyed it. Like I'm definitely going to use it for upcoming projects, especially like the getting things up and running very fast is what I like.
Yeah. That's the part I really love is that you throw away all the components and everything else. It's so quick to like put all that together. And people are like, well, I have this like snippet file of things I just used to do that. I'm like, I do too. It's called Tailwind. So that's my thought. I'll just leave it at that.
All right.
I think, I mean, because I think it was the same. Tailwind was one of those things that I struggled at the start with. And I think I still would struggle with it for my own projects if I had full control over it. But it's easy to remove when you want to customize stuff and make it your own way. Whereas my biggest bugbear with seeing Tailwind was my same opinion for every CSS framework that comes along, is that like Bulma, for example, it dominates your code, and it's really hard to remove because you've ended up spending so much time customizing to make it look correct that you can't remove it then. Whereas with Tailwind, I think you just remove the classes and style the components, right? And you've not lost anything, and it can be done one by one. And I think that's a real an underrated thing about Tailwind.
Yeah. No, that makes sense.
That's one of the tricky things with writing the component libraries, how many components to specify as a Svelte component only. It's a little tricky because if you want to be like an HTML purist, you kind of start to get out of that a little bit with all the Svelte side of things. Yeah. So that is challenging for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Reading Tailwind is what can be tough for me sometimes. That's probably the biggest downside. I have trouble like parsing it mentally.
I actually have like the reverse problem because I've written it so long. Like I'll be like, oh right, what's items center actually mean in CSS? Which is really bad. Right. It should be pretty straightforward.
Well, CSS is hard. Like it is definitely harder than you would think. So
I can't believe the newer tools in CSS, like the has and things
so
like
cool.
that. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And I saw and like Chrome has this, they have types for custom properties now, which is super cool. And Safari released it yesterday, so now we're just waiting for Firefox. I actually opened
Firefox. They're so far behind everything now.
Yeah, now that Safari has, or rather WebKit, the WebKit team seems to have gotten, I don't know, funding from above or something to actually do stuff. They're shipping a lot and very fast as well. Yeah. I think they're actually shipping stuff faster than the Chrome team at the moment, which is kind of scary in a way. But yeah, I actually opened an issue for a feature request on the Svelte GitHub repo a couple of days ago, where I thought it would be cool if you could have typed CSS custom properties, because you know, like how you can pass in custom property values straight onto a Svelte component, right? You just as a prop, but you prepend it with 2 dashes, right? Wouldn't it be cool if those could be typed as well? Because they aren't now. So what if you could just like have that CSS typing property thing in your CSS style tag, and then the Svelte language tools would pick those up, and you're like trying to pass in a number, but it's just like, oh, this isn't a color. You should pass in a color, and it wouldn't compile or something, or a warning at least. That'd be fun.
Yeah, that would be interesting for sure.
Not that I use those features that much anymore since I use Tailwind, but it'd be cool.
That's another thing in this UI kit. It's all CSS variable based. So switching a theme, it's just update your.
Yep.
Sorry, what's the correct word for CSS variable? Custom.
A custom property.
Custom property. Yeah. So
Yeah.
just
I don't know
update your
why,
custom
but
property and you're good. Yeah, I don't know either.
Because I think they were named CSS variables at some point.
I think there is another like RFC that specifies CS. I heard of like a podcast on it once. Why they went away from that name? It's like, oh, you should have just took it.
Yeah.
I mean, they are still called var, right? They are like prefixed var.
That is true. Yeah. Yeah. var, and then I guess the CSS function is called var.
It's weird.
But yeah.
Weird.
Yeah. So speaking of Tailwind, maybe a bit of an interesting discussion would be, should Tailwind be built into the frameworks? So there's a framework called Imba that does this.
That's true.
So should Svelte make built-in support for Tailwind? Like, should it be built into the network? The framework.
Wow, that's something that'll probably get everyone in trouble.
Yeah, but then you start thinking about it, like
Scrimba and that Imba team, what they're doing with that though, and it's kind of amazing because they're not running any VDOM either, so it's amazing what they're accomplishing.
It's really cool, like the Scrimba website. I remember, so I've told this thing on the podcast a couple of times already, but it's worth mentioning again. Like, I went to the Scrimba website the first time and I started watching something, and then I realized that I can just pause the video and just change the code, and I realized, oh, it's not a video, because it's just like perfect, like 60 frames per second kind of experience. It's a really well built website. At least it was. I haven't been to it in a while now. So
I tried hacking through that because that's exactly what I've always wanted to build for Coding Cat. And usually we're writing stuff more like what Rich has on the. I'm gonna get this wrong. Is it learn.svelte.dev?
No, that's right.
One of them.
Yes.
Okay.
That's the new one. Yeah.
It's kind of more that style, but the way that Scrim is doing is unbelievable. Like it's almost baked into the DOM itself. And then the video sync. I do not like how they record though. I tried doing their teaching. I submitted to be a teacher on Scrimba and walk through that, and like the editing experience. I'm like, oh, this is something
not good
to work on. But the actual product at the end is incredible for those taking it. So pretty neat.
Yep. I do wonder though, like, how would it actually look if it was built into Svelte? Like, would it really be any different than just being classes? Probably not.
That's interesting.
I don't know.
How would you change it, right?
Because you still want. That's one of the things with Imba. It kind of goes this completely different direction, and it kind of looks like Ruby on Rails, kind of, in a sense. Like the same syntax kind of thing that's going on over there. Anyway, we could probably talk about this for days, but let's continue to picks. So I'm going to pick the YouTube shorts on Svelte Society. If you haven't watched them, go watch them. They're very fun. They're very short attention span kind of content, like 30 seconds long with the silences removed from everywhere. So it's just like we've got this video of Rich talking about Svelte 4 news. And it's basically just clips from longer videos that are on Svelte Society. So if you've already watched the longer videos, you're not missing out. But it's still like the experience of making them is it actually is kind of fun, but I can see it becoming very tedious very quickly. And it's that's my pick. Go watch them.
My original pick we already talked about was blackcatui.com. Definitely check it out. But as just a kind of offhanded pick, it was my birthday on Friday, and my wife got me a heated desk pad because I'm in my basement.
Ooh.
I didn't think I'd use it that much because my fingers are always on the keyboard, but surprisingly, like the backs of my hands are still down, and the warmth that I'm getting is just unreal. So definitely check those out if you're working in a cave like I am.
Or just in England, like I am.
They're always cold. Well, I mean, I don't know if you guys can see what it looks like outside here, but it's basically like snowy and
wow,
disgusting.
Sweden, snow in Sweden, eh? Who knew?
Who could have thought? We actually thought we were getting spring because it was like 12 degrees Celsius, and it was like, oh, that's very nice. Sun is out, and then 2 days later we get this snowstorm. Yeah, okay.
Yep.
It's the year. It's the yearly baked. The yearly baked spring is what we call it. Well, maybe don't really. I don't think we actually call it that, but it sounds fun. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah. So for my pick, discovered the other day actually, but I think it's a new way of managing your package manager dependency. So NVM came and went. People started using things like Volta or some other solution. Volta I've been using for a while. It's fine, but it has issues that caught someone out. Again, I can't remember their Twitter handle the other day, but essentially, if it installs things like PNPM with a global version of Node that doesn't match the version of Node it pins to your project. So you can sometimes find that your build will run with a different version of Node than the one you actually have in your project, which for me defeats the purpose. And it's very confusing. It's documented, but also in a confusing way. So I've been looking at, some of my team just don't want to use Volta, and that's fair, but it kind of defeats the purpose of it because it's supposed to be, it locks us all to each project having a specific version of Node and a specific package manager. So luckily, I've noticed, and only allow PNPM, which is a package you install, so that if you type npm in a project that uses PNPM, it will say, no, you must use PNPM. It doesn't work. It's never worked. I don't know what the deal is with it, but it's never actually worked. So package manager now is a new field you can specify in your package JSON since Node 16 or something recently, or Node 16 and Node 18, I believe it's in. And that will tell npm to always use that package manager at that version, that exact version, instead of the one that's installed in your machine or the one that you've called it with. So if you call it PNPM or npm, whatever else, it will look at that field and go, I should use this instead, which is exactly what we're trying to do. It solves the whole problem. Everyone working on that project will be using that specific package manager, and stuff will be predictable and nice and smooth again. So my pick is only recently discovered a couple of days ago, really. I only recently used and implemented, but use that field because it takes away a lot of mystery, I would say. So yeah, the package manager field in package.json.
Cool pick. Nice. All right. I think that's it. Unless we have anything that I've forgotten, I think that is it. Yeah.
The only addition I'll give you is Svelte's package version. When you go through like the setup and you can pick, is this the library versus not? That has been really nice to be able to publish out npm packages. So just FYI.
And recently rejigged as well, in fact, because it was doing a bit too much before.
I think that was rushed out. Well, maybe not rushed out, but like prepared for the Svelte hackathon, I guess.
Yeah, that's probably very likely.
Yeah, cool. Alex, it was a treat having you on. Let's do this again. Where can people find you on the interwebs?
You can find me at CoderCatDev. If you accidentally end up at CodingCatDev, you'll find me all over the place on there. So no problem there. People get confused all the time. Definitely come on over to the AppWrite server too and say hello. So kind of float around those two areas quite a bit.
All right. And you also have a podcast. I guess that's the CoderCatDev. That's where they find the podcast.
CodingCatDev, you can find all the podcasts listed out. A familiar face on this show, Brittany Postma, is also my co-host for CodingCat.dev podcast. So definitely check us out there too.
Yep. All right. Well, thanks for coming on again. And to all the listeners, we'll see you or hear you. Well, we won't hear you. You will hear us next week. And yeah, bye-bye. Hey, it's Kev here. If you like the show, please drop a review on your favorite podcast player. It would help out a lot. Thanks.